And we are almost good to go. All righty, we are live. Hello, Facebook family, and welcome to the Word Among Us interview series. This is our third go at it, and we are just interviewing inspiring people and learning a little bit more about them and what they're working on. Today, we are very special because we have a wonderful human. She is a speaker, a retreat leader, an award-winning author, and welcome, without further ado, Liz Kelly. Thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having me. It's really fun.
Oh, good, of course. So Liz, you are a native Minnesotan.
Correct.
Where are you joining us from today?
I am back in Minnesota after living all over the country and all over the world to some degree. I lived in Alaska, I lived in California, I lived in Vermont, I lived in Boston. I bounced around quite a bit, lived in Rome for a little while. I moved back to Minnesota about 2006, and I've been here ever since.
Very nice. Which is your favorite out of all those places?
Oh, it would be really hard to pick just one, but Rome can't be topped for a whole host of reasons. Alaska can't be topped for a whole host of reasons. But I really like being back in Minnesota, mainly because I'm just close to my mom and dad. They're going to be 93 and 88 next month.
Oh,
still going strong. So it's awesome to be able to spend time with them. And my brother's here, who's a priest. And so it's really nice to be able to spend time with him. My other brother's here. All four of my sisters are spread out, but
yeah. Wow, that's awesome. So you have two brothers and four sisters?
Mm-hmm.
And where do you fall in the birth order?
I'm 6 of 7. And I just wrote about this for my Father's Day column that my brother Joe, my older brother Joe, was really hoping I'd be a boy. He was just dying for a brother, dying for a brother. And they even had picked out the name Michael for me. They thought I was going to be a boy, but of course, surprise, I was not. And when he picked up the phone to hear, that I was born, he'd sort of slammed it back down in the cradle and said, "Another dumb girl." So that's how I was welcomed into the universe, another dumb girl. But
love it. What energy to welcome you.
we tell that story over and over because of course I'm not just another dumb girl, and he did get a brother eventually. That's my younger brother, and he turned out to be a priest, and so we're all pretty happy with that guy.
That's awesome. That guy. So tell us a little bit about yourself, Liz. I know I gave a brief bio, retreat leader, speaker. You are an author, you're involved in so many projects, but tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, I was thinking about this the other day because I had driven past, or I was thinking about the place where I went on my first retreat. And it was in Sleepy Eye, Minnesota, if anybody knows where that is. And there were a group of sisters that lived on this little lake. And I was probably in 6th or 7th grade when they took us on our first little mini retreat, for a day. And from that moment, from that day, I just remember there being something really special about coming away and praying and being with God in a very intentional way. And from that time, I've just been so interested in retreats and the life of prayer. And I was on the retreat team in high school and all that. And so then, maybe 10 years ago or so, I started certification for spiritual direction, offering spiritual direction. And I've been leading a lot of women's retreats and just speaking at different women's events. And just from the time I was a little kid, that's just something that's really been so attractive to me. And I think I had a sense of, I wouldn't have been able to say this in 6th grade, but I think I had a sense of like God really anointing that time. And I was very interested in, I'm still very interested in creating circumstances where God's anointing shows up. I want that to happen in my books, in my talks, in my retreats. So anyway.
That's beautiful. In particular, doing a lot with helping young women flourish in their faith. So how did you kind of get involved in that?
Yeah. Um, I think it just naturally progressed, maybe because I have four older sisters or something. I don't know. I've always just had a kind of leaning toward helping women in particular. It just kind of naturally fell that way. And I mean, obviously, I give retreats for men and women and married couples and all sorts of different things. But I guess part of the, if I have a gift or if I have a ministry, there's a sensitivity in me, an awareness in me to the feminine wound, maybe. Um, and I feel sort of a special call to tend to that, and to offer women vehicles into God's response toward them and toward that feminine wound. Because I think the feminine wound, the masculine wound, these are kind of different universes, and yeah, I was just always very attracted to that, very aware of it. And again, maybe because I have four older sisters and I just grew up with a lot of estrogen in the house.
So did I. So day to day kind of like with all of your different, things going on, what do you spend your time doing?
Hmm. Well, it's funny, as probably anybody who's read any of my stuff knows, is I have multiple sclerosis. And so I'm like tired all the time. I have a very mild case of it, but because I have to sleep more than the average person my age, it's like how I spend my time becomes just critically important. I don't have any room to waste a minute. And I've just been reflecting a lot on that passage of Paul, where here he is in prison. You know, he's in prison and he's writing. He's still doing his ministry. It doesn't matter. He's in prison. He's going to do it anyway. And I feel like that's sort of what I have to do. It's like I'm tired. I gotta do what God's asking me to do, no matter what the sort of physical circumstances are. And so I mean, I love to read, I love to pray, I love hanging out with my husband. He's a great guy, architect, very creative, and runs at the same speed. He likes those things too, praying and reading, and so we're very good companions in that capacity. And you know, my parents being so elderly at this stage, I try to spend as much time as I can with them as well.
Of course. Which is your favorite you're reading right now?
I'm sorry you get cut out.
What is your favorite book you're reading right now?
Oh, well, I've got a couple. One is The Resurrection by Fabrice Hajjaj, a French Catholic thinker. And in my day job, I run an academic journal, and we print uh, interdisciplinary pieces on Catholicism and Catholic thought. And we did a piece on him not long ago. And I just remember thinking, who is this guy? I hadn't heard of him. He's a French writer and thinker. And then someone did a little collection on his works. And so I got that book and I've been reading that. And that's just delightful. It's very dense. And then I'm also part of Blessed is She. And one of the things one of our directors there suggests we do every year is that we choose a saint to accompany us through the year. And the saint that I chose this year is Saint Maximilian Kolbe. So I've been reading a ton of his stuff, his letters, you know, some of the different collections that I've put together on him. And to read anything on Saint Maximilian Kolbe is really to read about the Immaculate Conception, because he was just crazy in love with Mary as the Immaculate Conception. So I've just been reading a lot of that. And then I'm reading another really wonderful book on the Old Testament prophets that's just marvelous. So I got a few other things cooking too, but that's probably enough. Yeah.
Yeah, I remember reading about Colby growing up. I think he's the coolest
Mm-hmm.
when I was younger, just being immediately drawn to. But
Mm-hmm.
we want to talk about your book, and I wanted to read quickly a review from Colleen Carroll Campbell, another great author, and she wrote about Love Like a Saint. In this graceful, penetrating guide to the forgotten virtues, Elizabeth Kelly introduces readers to a series of lesser-known holy women whose paths to heaven are both eminently relatable and utterly unique. And I just love that review because that's exactly why I loved your book so much. Was it brought these holy women, these saints, down to a level where I felt like they were more sisters and less like these lofty people that I had nothing in common with. So can you describe the book, your book, a little bit in your words?
I think, one of the great advantages to writing about holy women over the last couple hundred years is we have so much more material on them. We have photographs of them. We have so many more accounts that are more freshly gathered. And I specifically chose women that I didn't know a lot about because I wanted to learn about them. And I also wanted to concentrate on just one or two virtues per woman because, I mean, obviously they practiced more than just one or two virtues, but I think what happened by drilling down just on one or two of the virtues in each of their lives, it invited a kind of intimacy, like you're talking about. It feels like, somebody comes in and sits down on your couch and you have a conversation. And I didn't realize that that was going to happen, but I think that was one of the things that started to unfold as I was working on the book. So I really wanted to choose women that would be from all walks of life, married, single. There's even a child in there, Anne de Gagné, Venerable Anne de Gagné. And I was really hoping to appeal to younger women as well. Benedetta, for example, Blessed Benedetta, never married. And she was a professional woman. She was a year shy of receiving her medical degree as doctor. So I wanted to get a broad range so that women could see themselves in a broad range of life experiences.
It's awesome. It brought so many people that I had never, it wasn't just things that you hear about. What was your inspiration for writing the book? Like, how did you write it?
Yeah, when I first started spiritual direction school, we were using a volume on the virtues that had been written by this very holy priest. He's since deceased. His name is Father John Wickham. And he wrote just a little introduction to the virtue, and then he offered all of these different verses from scripture to pray about receiving that virtue. And the first minute I held that book, I was like, boy, I really want to write this book. I want to write it for women, but I want to include stories about the virtues and not just commentary on the virtues. And so that's where the idea got plopped into my head. And so I think I've been sort of collecting ideas about it for, probably 10 years. And then when COVID hit, like so many speakers and retreat leaders and things, all my work dried up in about 3 days. I suddenly had all this time on my hand. And, it's exactly like Paul in prison. Well, your ministry doesn't stop because there's a pandemic. It doesn't stop because you're in jail or there's an economic crisis or whatever. You still have to continue on. And so that was one of the things that I was able to do then during that COVID break, is really start to concentrate on the research that I had been doing on that. So it was a very fruitful year for me in COVID, thank the Lord.
COVID has, it really elevated everything important in a good way, like your research, and it gave a lot of people the opportunity to do things that they wouldn't have before. So it's nice to get that silver lining and have time to be able and sit down and write. What is your writing process? Do you have a process that you go through book?
Yeah, it's interesting. This is my 9th book, and I would say everyone is different. It's almost like birthing a child or something. Like no two pregnancies are the same. No two writing of books is exactly the same. I would say that I had a kind of confidence in that I knew my own littleness in writing about a saint. Writing hagiography is really a sacred task. And one of my favorite things to do, just generally speaking, and what I did a lot of when I was freelancing was biography, features of biography. So I love to interview people and try to capture their life. And that's a really sacred task, to try to capture someone in, 1,000 words, or whatever it is. And so just magnify the sanctity of that process when you're trying to talk about somebody who's really holy, and not wanting to fall into the temptation to sentimentalize them. I think that's kind of the balance, is you want to present a very honest picture. And I knew that these women would be helping me and praying for me, because obviously they're invested in and they're interested in having their stories told well, not because of themselves, but because how it reflects on their relationship with God, and who God is, and who God is to women. And I think there's just a real hunger for um, a deeper sense of the life of holy women, to make that a little bit more accessible. If that makes sense. So yeah, my writing process with this was a lot of like, okay, Blessed Benedetta, you got to help me pull out what's the most important stuff. The other difficulty in doing 12 different virtues and multiple different women is that I really had to pick and choose what were the highlight pieces of their lives that I wanted to put in the book. It's not like I could just sit back and include it all, because I was only doing one person. So I really relied on them to guide my imagination to what they wanted highlighted.
That's very, very cool. Probably maybe a question to ask, but did you have a favorite saint that or holy woman when you were writing it that kind of came out to you, or are they all their own, your own kind of favorite in each way?
Oh yeah, I couldn't possibly choose one. That's a really unfair question, but I understand why you ask it. Um, I do have a real affection for Blessed Benedetta. Um, she really launched this whole thing. My first thought was that I would write a book about her, and I still think that I might do that. But I just have all these Blessed Benedetta stories of synchronicity, of ways that she was showing up in very concrete way. She was sort of piercing the veil and saying, I'm here, I'm supporting you in this, I'm praying for you in this, including that, one day I just got a call from a woman in Omaha. Could I come and lead a women's retreat there? Sure. I said, how'd you find out about me? And she said, well, I read an article that you wrote on Benedetta. I said, oh, how'd you find that? And she said, oh, well, I had coffee with her niece the other day, and she told me that I should pray to her about different things I was going through. And so I started looking her up, and your article came up. So it turns out Benedetta's niece went to the parish where I was going to offer this women's retreat. We had the chance to meet. She gave me a bunch of materials on Benedetta in English that hadn't been able to put my hands on. Huge help, huge help. And she really became kind of the anchoress for the book. She was one of the first chapters I started. She was one of the last chapters I finished. I just wanted to be so careful about it. And the two virtues that I'm talking about with Benedetta are perseverance and friendship. And they're both so important in different ways, but I think we've just really lost a sense of Christian friendship, what it means. And she just embodied it in such a beautiful way. And so I was just very grateful for those little points of connection. I'll go out and speak on her, and someone will come up to me afterwards in tears saying, I have the same disease that she had. I mean, I've been looking for a saint my whole life, and here she is. That kind of thing happens all the time.
That's wild. And that's a huge synchronicity. Like that's
Yeah.
such like her niece to come and give you these things that you would have never been able to get before is so like
No.
keep getting.
Well, and I remember one day, one night I was lying in bed and I was just praying and I was saying, Benedetta, if you really want me to write about you, I want to hear from you that you want me to do it. Which is kind of a bold and maybe a little bit of a immature prayer, but that's what I was doing. So the very next day, I'm at my job and I get a text from a girlfriend. She says, hey, I have something for you. Can I stop by? Can you run out and pick it up? I said, sure. So I ran down to the curb where she was waiting with her kids, filled with her minivan filled with children. And she gave me an artist's rendering, a watercolor of Benedetta. This was like, I just started crying and I said, you have no idea what this means. And she's like, what? So I told her the story and then she started crying. And, I had never ever seen any artistic rendering of her. And it just happened. A local artist had decided to render her in watercolor. And my friend got a copy of it and gave it to me the very next day, things like that. So I'm excited to meet her in heaven. She was just a real beauty. I can't wait to meet her.
That's going to be a that you meet in heaven, a very big sister. That's so cool. And
Yeah.
not even, yeah, that's just wild. So you mentioned that you have 9 books. Do you have, if I can ask another unfair question, do you have, is there anything that you worked on that has been your absolute favorite thing?
You can't ask me that question. It's like trying to pick your favorite child. And again, I think I like them all for different reasons. And I'm probably liking my books better as I go along just because I'm maturing and growing as a writer. Hopefully I'm getting better. And so, my last 2 books were probably my favorite to work on. And also because I think that one of the things that I'm learning is that my writing has to flow from my prayer. It's most successful, it's most effective. Just it's better, it's more creative when it's really flowing out of my prayer. And so learning that about myself, going on and just investing more time in prayer and adoration as sort of the wellspring for whatever work that I'm doing. I'm hoping it's getting better. I'm hoping it's getting more effective. And but yeah, it's impossible to pick just one thing. I did really love working on Love Like a Saint because of I do feel like I have these new women friends who would just do anything to help me. They're interceding for me.
That's awesome. So this won't be an unfair question. Do you have anything upcoming that you're working on, or are you inspired by anything else or anything?
Yeah, another book I've been wanting to write for probably the last 10 years, and I'm starting to kind of gather myself around it, is I want to write a book of reflections on the last words of Christ on the cross. Just been thinking about that a lot. A person's last words are so significant. When someone passes away, we say, what were his last words? And we know, for example, with JP2, when he died, they were saying mass at his bedside, and he raised his right hand during the elevation twice. These were some of his last gestures, and I think his last words are, I'm kind of forgetting, but he was going home. He was going home. It was something about him returning home to his father, and so how much more sacred can Christ's last words be to us? And they're so heavy, those 7 utterances. I mean, they're so theologically rich. Woman, here's your son. I mean, the Mariology in that, forgive them. They don't know what they've done. Forgive them anyway. I mean, they're just these powerhouse pieces that I've just been thinking about and reflecting on for a long time. So I'm looking forward to that.
I'm looking forward to reading that. That sounds like an incredible book. So I'm sure we're all looking forward to checking that out when you write it. I do want to ask you, thank you so much for your time so far. And we have been asking the folks that come on and speak to us 2 questions. And one of them's very relevant for kind of where we are right now. So I wanted to ask your, see what your answer was. For those people who have stopped going to church during the pandemic and don't see a good reason to go back, what would you say to them?
Mm. That's actually kind of a really heavy question. If that, I guess I would invite them to consider what they imagine is happening at the Mass. And if they could consider what is actually happening at the Mass, and they understand what's happening at the Mass, I don't think you could keep them from the Mass. People would be beating down the doors. So if there isn't that pull to return, maybe there's an opportunity there to look at your own understanding of what the Mass is, and there's so much good material online. You can just type in probably what is the Mass, and you're going to get Bishop Barron and Father Gallagher, and all the greats are going to pop right up and tell you what's going on at the Mass. But it is such a profound encounter. And I tell people this all the time. I say, if people understand the Blessed Sacrament and they understand the priesthood, Catholicism is irresistible. If you really begin to understand what those 2 pieces are, it is absolutely irresistible. And so if it isn't irresistible to you, I would ask, do you really know what those 2 pieces are? And would you be willing to take a peek at some of the information that's out there and really pray with it and open your heart to it? I would challenge them that way.
That's a great answer. Take up on that. If you don't Google Blessed Sacrament, Google priesthood, Word Among Us has a lot of good information and resources on that as well. So
there you go.
A great answer. The second question is from James Lipton's Inside the Actors Studio. And I know, Liz, you or are an actress at some point. So I don't know if you've checked out Inside the Actors Studio, but he asked this great question that I love. And it is, what would you like to hear God say when you arrive at heaven?
I wasn't ever an actress, but I was a singer. So there's a stage element for sure. Outside of just hearing him say my name, I just think that would be such an intimate thing. I'd really like to hear Jesus sing. There's this great moment when he's getting ready to go to the cross and they've finished the Last Supper and they're leaving to head to the garden and they leave singing. And I've just always been very intrigued by that moment. I'd love to know what that song was that was leading him on his way to Calvary. I think that'd be really beautiful.
I love that answer. I haven't ever heard someone answer that way. So that's awesome. Hear Jesus singing would be, I imagine, the most beautiful noise in the world. So
right, yeah.
Well, Liz, we are just at about 1 o'clock. So I wanted to thank you so much for joining us. And if you could remind everybody out there who would like to read, it's an incredible book. Your latest book, Love Like a Saint, Cultivating Virtue with Holy Women. Where can they get a copy?
Well, certainly at Word Among Us Press or my website, lizk.org. There's a lot more information about where I'm speaking and where I'll be traveling and things like that there. So they could definitely check that out.
Very cool. So everyone, we are so grateful to have Liz today. And yes, check out bookstore.wau.org. Her book, Love Like a Saint, is up there. You can always go on Amazon as well. and type in Love Like a Saint Liz Kelly, it will pop up immediately. So Liz, thanks so much. I wanted also to remind everyone we have our next Facebook line is July 15th, and it's going to be with Josh Danis. He's the author of Living the Fruit of the Spirit. And so same time, same place, 12:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Liz, thanks again. It was awesome to meet you a little bit more intimately. And I hope you have a great rest of your day.
Thank you. You too.
Bye, Liz.